This is the Gotham podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about The Penguin, Episode 2, Inside Man.
What do you think it was that changed for her?
I'd like to think it was me, but I don't know. She died a few years back, I never asked. Shit like this, the pain of it, you gotta be careful. 'Cause it'll eat you alive if you let it. It's a hell of a lot more fun to dance.
Welcome back, fellow Gothamites, to the second episode of the Gotham podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We are delving into episode 2 of The Penguin, Inside Man. I am one of your mobster hosts, John.
I am your other ornithological host, Derek.
Excellent.
I know birds, me.
Yeah.
I don't really. Well, welcome back to the Penguin podcast. John, did you know the ratings came out for the Penguin after the first episode came out?
I did.
5.3 million viewers.
Fantastic stuff.
That's huge. Like, I know Gotham, when it was out, it was on a main channel, Gotham being the show that we covered on this podcast originally back 10 years ago. When that originally came out, it had over 10 million viewers, I think, for the first episode.
Wow.
But the TV landscape has changed so many times over the years, and HBO is a much more niche channel. So getting 5.3 million viewers for that first episode is massive.
Well, I think it's slightly different as well. I mean, I do think Gotham 10 years ago, it came on the heels of the Nolan movies. And I think there was a thought that it would go in that direction.
Yeah.
Certainly we did. It didn't quite go in that way.
Yeah.
This is following on the heels of the Matt Reeves Batman reboot. And of course, unlike a lot of TV, certainly from America, even this week we had Colin Farrell promoting it on the Graham Norton show.
That's right.
So, it's big promotion for a TV show because I guess it's so intrinsically linked into this new Batman ecosystem that is being developed by Matt Reeves.
Yeah, and it's a weird one, isn't it? Because it sits outside of this brand new reboot of the DC universe that James Gunn is going to be doing in the future. This Batman is sitting in its own world with the Matt Reeves version of it. As you say, Colin Farrell promoting it this week on Graham Norton show, weirdly alongside Lady Gaga promoting the sequel to The Joker.
Yeah, that's true.
As she plays Harley Quinn, or Lee Quinzel, as she calls it there. So we've got Oz Cobb over here in the Batman universe. We've got Lee Quinzel over in the Joker universe, and never the twain shall meet. And it's so interesting in that interview, hearing Lady Gaga talk about Arkham Asylum and talk about Gotham and giving all of her opinions. And then it went to the next guest, who was Demi Moore, who talked about her movie, and then it went on to Colin Farrell, who was also talking about Arkham Asylum and Gotham. And it looked like Lady Gaga kind of went, hang on a second, we're not in the same movie, are we? Or will we cross over at some point in the future? It was really odd having two of them promote two different properties within DC's universe on the same couch, on the same show, and neither connected at all. And definitely one of them didn't know the other one was in a DC show at all, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
But coming out at the moment. Yep.
Good numbers, so all good for The Penguin.
Absolutely.
On HBO Max.
And I would say one final thing, while the numbers for that first episode of Gotham are around 10 million, you are totally right in the point that it was coming off the back of Christopher Nolan's movies, and the ratings did drop into the rest of season 1 for Gotham. A long time ago, very different ratings. I am very hopeful for The Penguin keeping these kind of ratings up, because the reviews have been stellar for this season of Penguin, understandably so.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, they're leaning in on The Penguin into, the mobster storyline, which, in all honesty, Gotham did as well, just in a very different way.
Yeah.
With a very different sensibility.
Yeah.
So, it's a classic Oswald Cobblepot, Oz Cobb, the Penguin storyline here.
Yeah.
And that's the interesting thing for me, having covered this 10 years. Fine, I get remakes and so on, but if the Penguin were to get another season, and I kind of do hope so, although hearing Colin Farrell talking about the 3 hours, 4 hours of the prosthetic application and it being taken off, that took a toll on him by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
So whether a season 2 would be attractive to him, I don't know. But it would be really good if they did. And it would be good if they did a different Oswald Cobblepot story. To me.
Yep. Him rising through the ranks is something that we saw before in Gotham, as
absolutely.
you say. So,
it's a staple of Oswald Cobblepot, but there are so many other stories.
Absolutely. It's funny, isn't it? Because the criticism of the Batman often is that all we ever get to see is his parents being murdered.
Exactly.
And just keep going back to that story over and over again. And there's 85 years now of history of the Batman. So similar for Oz Cobb as well. So, but just a reminder, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, pop on over to tvpodcastindustries.com. You can subscribe to our main podcast feed there, where we're covering loads of other shows as well. We're covering Marvel's Agatha all along and Lord of the Rings of Power at the moment as well. So you get all of those episodes. We also have our Penguin feed over there, which has all of our Penguin coverage, the Pennyworth coverage, and our Gotham coverage, and all the movies that we've covered from DC, including Matt Reeves' The Batman. And we'd also love to hear your thoughts about any of these episodes. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. And that is also the email address where you can enter our Oswald Cobblepot pub quiz.
Yes, the Iceberg Lounge pub quiz.
That's the one.
Question 2 will be up a bit later in our podcast, fellow quizzers and Gothamite.
It will be. Before we go into episode 2, John, we have a bit of feedback in on the first episode of The Penguin.
Yes. First up on email over at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Coffee and Vodka on episode 1 says, "Greetings, fellow fashionable defenders. Borrowing from some of the best, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Gotham, this masterclass in acting, effects, scenario, and direction is a great follow-through from The Batman. Not a fan of Sophia's hangman reference or Alberto's clipped little finger instead of a withered hand, as I read them to be a huge "that ship has sailed" FU to anyone hoping for some long Halloween action. Seems they're sticking to their grounded Gotham brand on both large and small screens. Grumbles aside, Colin Farrell continues to amaze. Kristen Milotti's Sophia was convincingly psychotic, and Clancy effin Brown as Don Maroney. I'm on board for the duration. Just one more thing, what's to stop Maroney from saying, Penguin gave me the ring? To anyone who asks, or am I missing something beyond this perfect? 4 punctured plum rides, plucky sidekicks, and rings of power out of 5. Peace and take care. Coffee and Vodka.
Very good, Coffee and Vodka.
Excellent stuff, Coffee and Vodka.
Nodding to one of our other shows that we're covering as well. Very good power. Really good. And in episode 2, I guess we get the answer to that question pretty quickly. That Maroney's not going to say Penguin gave me the ring, or he threatens to, but he's not going to say it because he kind of loves taking credit for the fact that he has messed up the entire Falcone family plan, right? So he's going to take credit for it. And I think underneath it all, Oz Cobb knew that. Oz knew that he would go in to take that credit.
Yeah, I think Oz realizes that there is this power vacuum still hasn't equalized. You know, the pressure hasn't equalized. And so there are so many people vying for the top. And even if a distinct narrative that or rumor that maybe Oz was the one that did it, Maroney is wearing the ring, and that still begs the question.
Exactly.
You know, plus he hasn't denied it, and you're 24 hours in, or a lifetime if, and this is from episode 2, you're there as Sophia going, why have we still not caught the person who's done and murdered my brother?
Yeah.
Why are they not hanging from the lampposts of Gotham? So, like, I guess it's caught up in that overall vacuum and gang warfare.
Yeah, absolutely. As for the reference to the Long Halloween, I don't think they're doing the Long Halloween live action. It would really be too difficult, I think, to sit within Matt Reeves' Batman, the way that he styled out that universe and brought the Penguin in when he did, and brought the Maroney family the way that he did into that movie. I think it would be too difficult to do the Long Halloween. While it is an excellent comic book, I kind of get the feeling with the DC universe that they don't really ever want to just adapt a comic book into live action. It's something that they haven't really done before, so it's a shame because it is brilliant. But then again, go out and read The Long Halloween. It's excellent.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read The Long Halloween, and I know you have Coffee and Vodka, of course, but if you haven't read Long Halloween, go out and read it. It's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And indeed the 2-part animation as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I know we haven't covered it on the podcast. I've watched it a couple of times now. Bought it on Blu-ray because I really enjoy the story, but it's an interesting one. There's moments where it just feels really sparse at times. There's no music in it in a lot of scenes, and because of that, it almost does feel like it's taking the comic book and translating it into its own movie. There's changes to the story, but it's worth watching. It's only a couple of hours, but definitely I'd highly recommend the book. It's really, really good. Thanks for that, Coffee and Vodka.
Yeah, thanks, Coffee and Vodka.
Over on Facebook at facebook.com/group/TV Podcast Industries. Our old friend Richard Blaze sends in his feedback on this first episode of The Penguin. He says, "Good God, what a show. Feel like I've been waiting for something like this forever. Watching it feels like seeing something really special for the first time, like Breaking Bad or The Last of Us. Colin Farrell is phenomenal in the role. If he doesn't win any awards for his performance, he is robbed. Gotham continues to feel dirty and disgusting even in the daylight, a time of day we rarely see in Gotham. The show is really setting the benchmark again for high-quality shows based on comic graphic novels, and I cannot wait to see where it goes. My only slight gripe was Penguin's limp. Just seems slightly more pronounced now compared to the Batman. Oh, and a nice little Gotham Easter egg I thought was Penguin and his mum."
Yes, absolutely. Actually, interestingly, Richard, in episode 2, there's a really good moment where Oswald is with Sophia and she's kind of powering down one of the long corridors in the Falcone mansion.
Yeah.
And you just have Oz saying, "What are we doing here? Is this a marathon?
Is this some kind of marathon or
some
what?"
kind of sprint?" as he's trying to
Yeah.
keep up with her because of the limp and his club foot. So really kind of, I kind of like that moment in this episode.
Yeah, but seeing what his foot looks like, it's so different to, him getting, maybe some kind of injury from a gunshot or something like that caused a limp. Seeing what his actual foot looks like in that first episode, you're going, I'm surprised he can walk at all. I'm surprised he just doesn't get himself a wheelchair or something rather than trying to walk on that foot, because that must be painful with every single step he takes.
Absolutely.
And it probably did come out of conversations with Colin Farrell in the makeup chair, where he was going, I'm going to accentuate this a bit more for the show because I have 6 episodes to tell the story of the Penguin. So maybe it's something like that. Great stuff. Great to hear from you again, Richard. I hope you're enjoying the rest of the season.
Yep. Thanks so much, Richard, for your thoughts. Really good to get them. Yep. Seems like a fantastic show so far. Let's hope the other 6 episodes clock in with resounding compliments from yourself as well.
Absolutely. With that said, let's get on to our chat all about The Penguin, episode 2.
Derek, please kick us off.
Absolutely, yes. This, of course, is based on characters created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane for Detective Comics, spinning out of the Matt Reeves Batman movie. This episode is written by Erica L. Johnson and directed once again by Craig Zobel, who directed episode 1 and will direct episode 3 as well. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the synopsis for The Penguin, episode 2, Inside Man?
Sure. With Oz's murder of Alberto Falcone pinned on Sal Maroni, Oz plans to team up with him to take control away from the Falcones. He plans a simple job with Maroni to hijack a shipment of drops travelling from Gotham to Robinstown. But nothing is as simple as it seems, and the job goes partially wrong, revealing to Sophia Falcone that there's an inside man in their organisation. But the Falcone leadership wants Sophia to keep out of the family business. Meanwhile, to hide his inside involvement, Oz plans to pin it on Johnny Vitti, but Sophia, ignoring Luca Falcone, goes off on her own. She pays off a drug-addled Detective Wise of the GCPD to find the leak, and he kidnaps Irvad, one of Maroni's men injured in the hijacking. He brings him still unconscious after being shot during the heist to the Falcone mansion, where Sophia instructs her right-hand man Castillo to put him in the basement and interrogate him as soon as he wakes up. But Sal Maroni's wife, Nadia, is angry with the kidnapping of Irvad and forces Oz to make it right. Oz continues to enact his new plan to implicate Vitti and tasks young Victor with planting Alberto's jewels in his car, while Oz coaches Irvad to tell the Falcones of Vitti's involvement. When Victor fails in his task, Oz changes up his plan and kills Irvad. He plants the murder weapon on Castillo, who is instantly killed by Luca Falcone. With the blame on her right-hand man, Luca again tells Sophia she should stick out of the family business for a while and spend some time away in Italy. But Sophia is not about to let old men tell her what to do. She proposes a team-up with Oz to complete Alberto's plan and take back control of the Falcone family.
So 2 episodes in and already a team-up?
Yeah, really good. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like the fact that it was done in a crypt. Very dark. There.
Absolutely. It's interesting. We were watching The Long Halloween, the animated version of it last week. And there is a moment when Carmine Falcone meets someone inside the Falcone family crypt so he can avoid being caught by the GCPD.
Yeah.
So it's funny that, a week later we're watching The Penguin and it's got a similar scene with Sophia hiding in the family crypt while having a conversation about taking over the family business. So really interesting stuff. But we will, of course, talk about our case file for this episode with our top 5 case notes, John.
Yes, let us get into case note number 1, Sophia's nightmare.
Yeah. The opening of the episode, yeah.
It opens, but there is reoccurring elements of this through the episode.
Yeah.
So obviously we see with her, is it a flashback? What is it? But ultimately we see that it is her psychiatric sort of on the sofa evaluation by her psychiatrist, a Dr. Julian Rush, played by Theo Rossi.
Welcome back, Theo Rossi.
Absolutely. Really good to have Theo Rossi back.
Yeah, we covered him in Luke Cage. Yeah.
Definitely. But we do also see that she is sleeping in her walk-in wardrobe rather than in her bed at her house. And we also, at the wake of Alberto, after his funeral, she kind of hears noises throughout the house that play on her mind. So there's this kind of nightmare psychiatric trouble that Sophia is going through, both in respect to Alberto's murder, but also because of her time in Arkham. And it also suggests, given the nickname we learnt from the first episode of the Hangman, and we see that reoccurring again actually outside of the front of the church after the funeral mass of Alberto. Again, hang the hangman.
Yeah,
I think there's a placard up.
Yeah, lots of protesters wanting her to go back to prison. And we hear from a radio news story that Sophia catches when she's in the car that she's actually been found guilty, I guess, and sent to Arkham for the murder of 7 women that they know about, is the way that they framed it. But she has been freed from Arkham. She is a freed woman. And yeah, as you say, there are protests outside telling her to go back to prison, effectively. So she's going through a lot here. We even see at the wake, some of the other mourners are watching videos of her and Alberto as a child together, as children together, while she's walking around the house kind of ignoring her. Yet I suppose from this nightmare you kind of see that she had this really strong relationship with Alberto. She said to Oz last episode that he visited her every single week and told her this plan of his that the two of them would work together. He'd get her out and the two of them would work together as leaders of the family. So it is all playing in her mind. Just one final touch about Sophia that I have as well at the beginning. Is we see her eating habits once again in front of the family. Yeah. We see her stuffing her face, but it's almost, she overhears people saying, oh, she's become an animal now. She hears them behind her. And then she goes even further with stuffing her face full of food like we were talking about last week in the scene with her in the restaurant.
I think the main thing is, Sophia has got her nightmares that are ever present on her mind. And the death of Alberto, the murder of Alberto, the mutilation of Alberto has just added onto that.
Absolutely.
But I love the fact that everyone around her is uncomfortable with her.
Yes. Including
Johnny Vitti. He challenges her at the start when she's the one that kind of says there must be an inside man. The new godfather here in Luca Falcone also kind of not wanting her to get involved. It's my decision. There's a general uncomfortable element to everyone around here, apart from Oz, who is trying to cozy up to her, both as a deflection of any spotlight on him, but also because he is party to some information that the rest of the Falcone family don't know. And so He's trying to make that connection and kind of stand apart from Johnny, Milos, Luca. And I like, even like you say, it plays out in the wake with Carla, an old childhood friend who almost forgets who she's speaking to until her daughter Gia comes around, and then she kind of holds Gia protectively. And you see Sophia again just saying, well, stay safe, and really sort of pushing that boundary. So in the main, everyone is really tiptoeing around Sophia because of her reputation.
Yeah.
And
but there's even that weird moment with Gia where Sophia sits down in front of her and fixes her hair and then tells her mother to take care of her, because you know how it goes for women in this family. It can go very badly for women in this family. So there's a mention twice in this episode about going to Italy, going to Lake Como in Italy. And there's something in the back of Sophia's head, and we'll talk about it in a later point, but there's something in the back of her head that almost equates Lake Como with really bad times, like she's being pushed out of the family, or like something really bad happened in Lake Como. So potentially that's something we'll see as the season goes on, as we learn more about Sophia's past, because right now, again, there's only little elements that we've got. But I absolutely loved this opening, The Nightmare. I thought it was so well realized on screen. You knew it wasn't a flashback very, very quickly, as you saw Alberto already without his finger that was taken from him. So you saw that very quickly. But the changing over from the nightmare to that light that Dr. Julian Rush is using to hypnotize her almost, I thought was a fantastic transition. And just seeing her completely freak out when she comes back into the room, and how Julian Rush calms her down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just thought it was a really great opening for the episode. And see the kind of cliff edge that Sophia's already on at the moment. She's teetering on the edge of something really bad right now. So, really, really good. Really, really good.
Yeah, let us get on to our case note number 2. The attack on the drop run. Yes, Gotham's drug of choice, eye drops, and Oz effectively enacting his sort of sellout of the Falcones to Maroni, or at least for the time being. So I kind of like here how Oz is quite fluid, but he ultimately comes through on his suggestion to Salvatore Maroni that, he can, at the drop of a hat, control the drops business in Gotham because of this decision by the old guard at the Falcone family to shut down this plant that Oswald looks after and consolidate in another plant. And so he is back again at Blackgate Prison, talking with Maroni. Interestingly, he's got his son and his wife, Nadia, played by the wonderful Shura Agadishelu, who I absolutely adore. Loved the fact that she had a few parts in this episode as Maroni's wife, Nadia Maroni.
Fab.
But effectively, she's not trusting him. Again, we have an interesting talk here about the war that has been started by Oswald pinning the death of Alberto Falcone onto Salvatore Maroni. And he is kind of playing with the idea that, well, I can just effectively snitch you up to the Falcone family. Why shouldn't I? Why did you do that? And you have Oz again being really kind of adaptable, thinking on his feet. And again, this plays out a bit later with Victor, where he's as a mentor to Victor, but he thinks on his feet. He's playing the game to effectively suggest to him, well, you take that win, plus I just saw that opportunity. It was an opportunity that I took. Things have played out the way they are, but you take that win of having taken the head of the new Falcone kingpin, and then you can also humiliate them further by taking their drops business here in Gotham. And in the end, he is persuaded by that. And I kind of like that, because it is. If he doesn't want a turf war, he could quite easily grass up Oscorp. But he doesn't, because he does understand the fact that there is still this vacuum.
Absolutely.
It's all to play for, in the same way that Oswald has that, in the same way that in a sense, the Falcones are still trying to assert their dominance that was granted to them by Carmine, not by Luca, not by Miloš, not by Johnny Vitti.
Yeah.
They were his right-hand men. They enacted his will, but Carmine was the top of the pyramid here.
Yes.
And that's what kept the peace. Him going has brought this vacuum, and Maroni, as much as Oswald, as much as anyone else, including Sophia, wants to fill that vacuum and become the dominant force.
Yeah, and with that conversation that was there with Alberto when Oz killed him, where Alberto's going, I don't know whether I can actually step into the shoes of Carmine Falcone. He was doing so much, he was controlling so much. Can anybody take the place of him? And here we are in the second episode, and there's lots of people trying and vying for that position, even though some of them are at a lower level, like Johnny Vitti. They are trying to take that position. They're trying to take that control, whatever way they can. One of the other things I really like about how Oz spins on his feet and is able to adjust what he's saying on the fly with Sal Maroni. When Sal Maroni tells him, I could just turn you in, he looks at his hand and goes, but you're there wearing the ring and you're taking the credit already right now. So why not just keep taking the credit?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's just those little imperceptible moments almost from Oz where he's assessing everything that's going on. How this all plays out as well. Again, another great way of delivering it in the show where Oz is kind of selling it. I wrote it in my notes as all kind of sells it as a bada bing, bada boom. This is done. It's a simple job. I've got it all in control. I have all the information. I'm going to be sitting in the second car. All you need to do is take out the front car, take out the van, and then you've got access to all the drops and you've got access to the city. So simple, all good, but your men have to do the work. They have to be held accountable for it, and I can stick out of it, basically. But how it's played out on screen while he's telling the story, you see him setting up for the run with the drops, and Johnny Vitti walks in and goes, hang on a second, this is your job. You need to sit in the front truck. So instantly Oz is in a position where he has no idea what's going to happen. He's out of it. He may get shot in the crossfire because he specifically told them take out the trucks and everybody
exactly.
in it. So he has to play within it. He has to actually kill other members of the Falcone men. I think those are his men, some of them that are on board that have worked alongside Oz at his factory.
Yeah, well, the truck driver in particular kind of marks him out as a rat and goes to shoot him, but takes out the Maroni's man, Irvad, who is there.
Yeah.
Who is equally surprised that the Penguin is in the FEMA truck during this transfer. So it's slightly disrupted. It doesn't run smoothly or according to plan, but ultimately the Maronis do get the drops. But Maroni's man Irvad is shot, but again, Oz has to make another split-second decision in order to save or not save Castillo, Sophia's right-hand man. So he does save Castillo, shooting a few of the men, but it does at one point look as though he's about to kill Castillo.
It does.
But he doesn't. He saves him. And so ultimately, Oz is treated as a hero, but the leadership of the Falcones are annoyed that all the drops have been lost and still are putting heat on Oswald.
Yes,
here, for sure.
I just love how this plays out. It's really interesting. It's almost like, in the Ocean's 11 movies where Danny Ocean is talking through his plan. You see it all play out, and then you see the twist and trick of it, that it's even more elaborate plan than he's told the audience on screen.
Yeah.
Here it's the opposite. The Penguin is telling Sal Maroni about this very simple plan that he's going to enact, and everything falls apart. But because of Oz thinking on his feet, Maroni still gets away with the drops. He does lose a few men, unfortunately, but Oswald's in the clear. He looks like a hero. And it's all because of the decisions he makes on the fly here. And I just love how it was presented on screen. It was really, really good. And again, as the episode goes on, we'll talk about it. But I love the part of Oz's plan in these moments is putting the spotlight on Castillo, because Castillo was the one that chased him down in episode 1 and almost killed him. Yeah. And tortured him with Sophia, and putting the finger towards Johnny Vitti for the murders. So these two people are at the center of Oz's plan. If you strip everything back, his trying to take over the Falcone family, trying to work with Sophia, actually what he's trying to do is take out Castillo for the slight on him last episode and take out Johnny Vitti for taking away his business in New York.
Absolutely.
So love that little kind of background drive for Oz Cobb, that underneath it all is a very petty man that will get revenge on the people that have slighted him. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think as well, it brings us on to our case note number 3, which Sophia looks for the rat.
Oh, yeah.
So it is Sophia that is the one that definitively says there was an inside man here, for the simple reason that the Maronis knew the timetable, knew the truck, and ultimately succeeded, even though, they did have their lead man, Irvad, shot and seriously injured. Again, she's bringing this up in front of everyone. And like you say, with Oz, he can almost say, well, it was changed by Vitti.
That's right. He's like, this is your route.
You go in the van. Yep. That was something that was different than what I had planned. There's a slight shift here. So it's all really, really good. But she believes that there is a rat. She brings this to the leadership. But ultimately, Luca is like, I'll deal with this, step away from doing this, which she doesn't do.
Exactly, because it's personal to her. She's saying to them, hang on a second, you really are worried about like £1 million being lost from the drops. You're worried about the money. We can just make more money. Like, look at the house they live in. Look at the amount of money this family actually have access to.
Absolutely.
And she's going, what you don't understand is my brother was killed and you still haven't found his killer. Why aren't people strung up all across the city for doing this?
Absolutely. And they've humiliated us. Why hasn't the justice been meted out here?
Exactly.
Why has nothing been done? So she feels, there is a certain element of betrayal here. And again, compounded by the dismissal of Luca. Yes, he says we'll look into it, but they're also going to look into her brother's murder, and nothing has been done. So she doesn't believe them, and hence takes it on herself to go looking for the rat against the orders of Luca Falcone. And so we have here her reaching out to a GCPD detective who has probably seen better days.
Absolutely.
Certainly enjoys a few drops in his eyes as well, like the Detective Wise, who she asks to sniff around to see who from the Falcone family or organization may have been linking in with the Maronis to bring about this treachery, this inside job.
Yes, classic GCPD. Got to be on the payroll for the Falcones. Got to be on drugs. So I was quite surprised, and I know they won't use him again after Gotham, but I was quite surprised this wasn't our introduction to Harvey Bullock in the world of the Batman. But this is Detective Wise, or not so wise, I guess, because he goes a bit further than they expected. They wanted some information. They wanted him to do some detective work, and instead he goes out and kidnaps Irvad from the hospital where he's been on life support, it looks like, while he's in a coma, or while he's still unconscious from the attack. And he just drags him, sticks him in his car, and drives over to the Falcone mansion on the day of the funeral of Alberto. And goes, there you go.
Yeah, there's all the guests arriving for the wake. And I wouldn't mind, but in the bar, when she effectively hires him to do this work, Sophia is adamant that he should do this discreetly so that the inside man doesn't know there's anyone onto him. In the end, it all kind of gets out because the Maroni family realize that their lead man on that transfer has been kidnapped, taken. And they also then bring in Oz to effectively admonish him. So it all kind of blows up a bit.
It does.
And also that Irvad is still unconscious. He's still got the hospital drip attached to him from where he's been kidnapped. And they can't actually question him at the moment because he's filled with morphine and is unconscious.
So Sophia sends Castillo, her right-hand man, to take him into the basement and kind of says to him, as soon as he wakes up, interrogate him, find out the information that you need. We need this as soon as possible so that we can shut this down, basically. So it does lead to another bit of an off-kilter version of Sophia as she's walking around the wake with all these family members who are looking at her, judging her, and she's kind of glancing at her phone over and over again, waiting for this interrogation to be completed so that she can move on from this and so that she doesn't get found out, really, for what she's done here. She has gone against the direction given to her by Luca. Stay out of this, we will sort this out, and gone full bore in grabbing one of the Maronis and dragging them to the mansion of the Falcone family, you know? Not the greatest of choices, but not hers. It's the detective's fault.
But I think as well, that moves us on to our case note number 4.
It does.
Because it has Oz having to think on his feet with a new cover-up.
Yes. And this is where we see Shohreh Aghdashloo playing a great character here. Nadia Moroni, just so angry that she has to deal with Oz Cobb. She had already warned Sal when she was in prison. She'd basically said, this guy is a dog, but maybe he can be retrained, because dogs can be retrained, basically. So, but in her mind, it's, if he hasn't been retrained, we can put him down. And that's basically what she goes for. She realizes that Irvad has been kidnapped. She finds out about it. It's Oz's fault. And she instantly threatens, well, that's it. You're dead. Yeah. You're gone. But luckily for Oz, he's been carrying around the photos from Carmine Falcone's folder of Vitti sleeping with the new head of the family's wife, Luca Falcone's wife. He's been sleeping with her for many years, apparently, and Oz has these photographs that he was trying to hand over to, again, take out Johnny Vitti for what he did shutting down his business. But luckily he has them with him, because he's able to hand them over to Nadia Moroni and say to her, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Or the iceberg lounge, I have something on every member of the family at home, and if we work together, we can take them down in one by one by one by one.
Well, that's it. He's trying to counter the suggestion from her that maybe he's not as in with the family as he's said to them.
Yeah.
She says, you're supposed to be our inside man. You're supposed to know their movements.
Mm-hmm.
How and why did you not tell us that they were going to go after Irvad?
Yes.
And he has to explain about Sophia, but also then but I am in on all of this, and gives those photos of Vitti. I do like with this whole thing, which kind of comes to play around the Falcone family mansion at the moment of Alberto's wake, is that, a lot of this, in a sense, you could put down to Luck, in that he tried to give Luca the envelope. He doesn't. He has it there with him when he's brought in by the Maronis. It's Luck. But at the same time, Oz is playing, he's got the 2 points of Castillo and Johnny Vitti. So, he's able to change his plans and be adaptable. He's kind of this great manipulator, great deceiver, but he does have Luck on his side. But I do think it's Luck that he creates himself.
Yes.
Maybe not all the time, but certainly with any great manipulator or great plan, that does need to be an element of luck, which he also doesn't have, such as with the FEMA truck transfer.
Well, yeah.
He has to adapt. And I like how he is teaching Victor
Absolutely.
this as well in this new cover-up. So,
this is the fundamental part of the episode, because we're learning about Oz Cobb in this world, in this version of Oz Cobb and what he's about. So there's a couple of conversations he has with Victor before the party. At home, he talks to Victor about his first job, how he got himself installed in the first job. You look at Oz Cobb and you go, would he be a character that would be central to a crime or a criminal organization? And he makes himself. So he talks about his first job, where he overheard somebody saying that one of the Dons needs a new driver. So he went out, stole a car, learned how to drive on a weekend, and became that driver for the guy.
Yes. Yeah.
But he also tells Victor that these things happen in the underworld. He thought he'd installed himself in a great position, but that guy got killed by Carmine Falcone a couple of months later. So he made himself indispensable to Carmine Falcone and kept himself going. So he's giving Victor these lessons. Make yourself indispensable, turn on a dime, change all the time. If a plan doesn't work out, that's your responsibility to fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. At the start of this moment, at the Falcone mansion, the mark is still Johnny Vitti. He's telling Victor to put the jewels into Vitti's car.
Yeah. I completely forgot that Oz would have taken the jewels after murdering Alberto.
And that has failed. Yeah. Victor isn't able to do it. He's caught by actually Vitti's driver, who's asking, who spooks him, and he has to make a run for it
I
effectively.
love that Victor has broken into his car to steal the jewels from the car. So he kind of could have played that. I think he could have found a way out of that. If he dropped them and said they were in his car, I tried to steal them, and then ran away, then the finger would still be on Johnny Vitti, right?
But he manages to get word to Oz of that, and so Oz has to end up changing his mark, and it becomes Castillo, you know?
Yeah.
Sophia's right-hand man, after being Johnny Vitti. Yet Johnny Vitti is still in play here, ultimately, with the photographs being given over to the Maroni.
Exactly. Yeah. So he kills him in a very Penguin way, very brutally, takes out his penknife from his pocket, stabs him and twists the knife until Ervad is dead, and then plants the knife in Castillo's pocket.
Absolutely. But the other thing is, in a sense, he's kind of prepped himself here. So he's kind of come into the wake and said, you know, oh, what's going on down in the basement? To see Sophia's, you know, goon is down there guarding someone. You know, who've you brought in? And immediately they go to Luca because they haven't done anything. They're now, what's going on?
Exactly.
So he blows open Sophia's undercover work that she's done off her own bat, and now all of a sudden it's everyone in the crime family at the wake who's being called in to find out who is the inside man. It becomes increasingly focused on the fact that it must have been someone during the transfer, so it can only be the people that were there.
Yeah.
And Luca kind of brings them all into a room in order to find out. And again, you have Oswald creating a bit of a kerfuffle with Vitti.
Yeah.
You think he's probably going to plant the knife with Vitti, but in the end, he plants it on Castillo because he knows they haven't been able to put the jewels there, and he's still got the photos in play with the Maronis, who will be less sympathetic to Vitti in the sense of, you know, they will do that when they do it.
Exactly.
In a sense.
Yeah.
So I like how this all kind of flows through and changes, and ultimately with Castillo being shot by again Luca Falcone, not Sophia. There's a great
scene,
there's a great moment where she just keeps saying, Sophia keeps saying, pass me your gun, and the gun isn't coming to her.
Castillo's trying to plead for his life, basically, not willing to give it up. He's been the right-hand man, and again, in his eyes, he has done nothing wrong. He's done everything for Sophia, but I just love the silence as Luca shoots without saying a word. It's almost like that moment where you realize, again, we talked about it last week, you know where the Penguin's going to go. You know he's going to become a big crime kingpin in Gotham. And here you have Sophia almost trying to execute her man with a super villain level of violence. She's trying to get him to give her his gun, and she's going to kill him with the gun. It's that moment where you realize she's trying to make a statement by killing him with his gun, rather than what Luca does, which is like, look, this guy is our inside rat. He's dead.
Yeah, he's done.
That's it. He's out. I don't need to make a big statement about it. Yeah. So, but it's that feeling that you get that Sophia is becoming a Gotham level supervillain as opposed to just a member of a crime family. So, so I love that. I thought it was really good. One last thing that Oz does is he plants the jewels in Castillo's apartment, the jewels that Victor was supposed to plant in the car of Johnny Vitti. He plants them in the apartment of Castillo so that when they go and investigate Castillo's apartment, it underlines again that he has been paid to kill Sophia's brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, well, it was at the same place. So Sophia knows that Alberto was going to pick up those jewels.
Yeah.
So she knows that he must have been there at the same time.
Exactly.
And I think the other important thing then is, you know, Oswald, despite all this wonderful scheming and sort of dodgeball that he's playing in real time in front of everyone that he's trying to betray effectively, gets landed with the job of digging the pit to put both Ervad and Castillo in.
Yeah.
And he just makes the point to Victor by telling him to lie down. Like, if you lose your worth to me, you know, in a sense, he becomes the worst mentor. It's like you'll end up in a 6-foot grave as well, like Ervad and Castillo here.
Yeah.
You have to think on your feet. You have to be adaptable. And he gives him the hard lesson, effectively.
Well, he could have taken out Johnny Beatty if Victor had been able to accomplish his job, but he says it to him. These two men should not be in this grave. They had to be because I had to change my plan, and it's your fault, Victor. So do I kill you now? Do I take you out now because you didn't accomplish the goals that I set out for you to take out Johnny Beatty? Or do you learn from this? Is this a learning, teachable moment for you, Victor, about how you stay alive in this world because you could be dead? Yeah.
So really, I thought it was really good. Really good. But let us move on to case note number 5. The emergence of a new alliance between Oswald and Sophia.
Yeah, the new alliance. You'd mentioned earlier on about Oz kind of working on Sophia earlier on in the episode, and there's some really interesting moments in that, when the leaders of the family tell Sophia just to stick out of it. They know she's mourning her brother, but they need to manage the business. And Oz meets her outside and kind of goes, you should be the leader of this family. And she's kind of telling him, hang on a second, you're in the house here, don't say that out loud. And he's going, why? Why am I not allowed to say out loud what is the truth? So he's been working on her, offering his services to her, but she doesn't take it to begin with.
She's skeptical of him. And
she's going, well, I know how this works out for you. You get to be the right-hand person to the new leader. But how does it work out for me is kind of what she's saying back to Oz. Like, I get how it's important for you, but what does it mean for me?
Like, she sees him as scrambling, really, and desperate, and she says, I don't owe you a thing.
Yep.
And
Oz's response going, but I owe you everything.
Yeah, absolutely. But he's also very much conscious that Sophia is not going to stop until she has, a head on a platter with this inside man, which he ultimately has to deliver. I think there's another moment where he kind of connects in around the funeral of her brother as well, where in a sense he puts himself on the same wavelength as her and Alberto and at odds with the rest of the Falcone family. He says Alberto would have hated this, and she's like, yes, he would. He would have just left and gone to the next best party.
Exactly.
And he kind of talks about how with the death of his two brothers, that his mum kind of just languished at the house until one day she said, let's go out and dance. And that was their funeral for the brothers that they would have loved, and it felt more real, more personal to them than any kind of formal funeral service and ceremony that would be done in a church. And it just to kind of make that connection that he is in a sense almost familiar with how she's viewing the death of her brother.
Oh yeah,
that these people organizing everything, not letting her in on the ceremony, are also the same people that are keeping her out of the family business. And it's all kind of wonderfully manipulative from Oswald. Interestingly as well, he does say that his mum is dead.
That's right.
So again, really hiding his mother.
Well, a part of it, you're wondering whether any of this story is true.
Well, that's true.
We know his brothers are gone. We kind of know that he's the only one taking care of his mother. We haven't got that story yet as to what happened with his brothers. But the way he's telling the story about his mom retreating into herself for weeks on end and then eventually going out to the jazz club with him and dancing, it's a great parable almost to give to Sophia about what she's going through. But you don't know that if that's exactly what is happening with the Penguin and his mom. In fact, you know how strong his mother is. There's a moment in this episode where he goes to visit her because one of the neighbours or her landlord finds her walking the street without a coat and a hat, saying that she wants to go to mass, and realising how bad her dementia is. Yet, when Oswald gets her up and dances with her, she tells him, I can't live my life like this. You told me you'd take care of me. You're a loser, and what does that make me? If you can't get me out of this crappy house, I need to be in a better place, and you told me you'd accomplish that. And you're kind of going, there's moments where she goes from suffering from dementia, which she is, to being this very strong woman.
Yeah, so very lucid.
Yeah, so did she experience that psychotic break when his brothers died?
Maybe.
Or at all? Or,
but it's those lucid points of contact that she has, and one of them is that Oswald has promised her a better life.
Yeah.
And it's to the point why they wanted Oz Cobb, not Oswald Cobblepot, because the Oz Cobb doesn't sound quite as maybe sort of lordly as Oswald Cobblepot.
Exactly.
Or to try and at least sort of, slightly reinvent the character that they're not from a rich family.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And the message that really is coming out from Oz's story, this manipulative story really that he's telling Sophia, is this stuff will eat you alive. If you focus on the death of Alberto, you will eat yourself alive trying to sort it out, trying to get revenge on everybody around you. But sometimes isn't it just better to dance? So he's trying to guide her into accepting the death of her brother in a way that benefits him.
Yeah.
And that does lead to her reaching out to him, because the big thing about Castillo being the one that's held responsible for the death of her brother is this was her right-hand man. This was the person that stood beside her at every point and did everything that she asked him to do, so she believed she could trust him more than anybody else within the family. He was right beside her. He wasn't just a hired gun for the Falcone family. This is Sophia's right-hand man, and he turned on her for what looks like some jewels, even though he probably had access to whatever money she wanted to give him or whatever money he wanted from Sophia.
I mean, interestingly, though, there is the argument as why she didn't sort of also doubt the evidence that it was do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I for me, though, I take it that she is so focused, on the revenge, as you said earlier. Why hasn't there been justice meted out, she says, to the leadership of the family?
Yeah.
Why are they not hanging from the lampposts around Gotham? So it's like, that's the headspace she's in. And here it's like everything is clouded. There's the justice.
Yes.
There's the revenge, even though it's her right-hand man, Yeah. Rather than having the... No, hang on, calm down, everyone, because Castillo wouldn't do that.
Well,
he's pleased, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, that's not in her head at all.
No.
She wanted a rat, she found a rat. It was a good proposition that came from the Penguin that this is the rat, effectively.
Yeah.
So she believes she's now caught the person that did this. It doesn't solve the murder of Alberto, though, I think. So she believes she's been paid off and believes that he has killed on behalf of somebody, and there is an idea in her head that it could be the Maronis that did it, but it doesn't. I think she will still have that vendetta against the Maronis for the death of her brother.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though she thinks she's found the killer here in Castillo. But because he was the traitor, because it was a right-hand man that was the traitor, Luca once again takes her aside and says, all right, your brother's dead, you found the rat, now it's time for you to back off. Almost like like a good little woman, off you go to your old retreat back in Lake Como in Italy. And that's what pushes her again over the edge. These old men telling her she needs to stay out of the family business. The whole plan that she had with Alberto is that she would come back out of prison, the two of them would work together, get this new drug to replace drops on the market, and they would now be an even more powerful version of the Falcone family working together. And she's being told, no, go off to your old childhood hideout, stay there for a long time while we sort out the family business, as good old men always would, basically. Yeah. And then she has the meeting with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's wonderful in that, she says, I'm going to force these old men to their knees. It should be fun. What about you, Oz?
Mm-hmm.
You in? And he simply goes, I'm in.
Yeah.
And end of the episode.
As that version of Happy Together plays, of course.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Interestingly as well, talking about the vendetta against Maroni. So I just wonder whether there'll be a little bit of a surprise. I just wonder that Oswald at the Iceberg Lounge kills Alberto. And the way that scene plays out, it's very, and as Oswald's mum said, you were instinctual.
Yes. Yeah.
But I wonder, was it something from one of the higher ups in the Falcone family? I just don't know.
Okay.
Was it Luca? Was it Johnny Vitti even? And that there's a bit of subterfuge here around one of their relationship there in full view of everyone else. I don't know. It's pure speculative guesswork from my point of view, but I wonder whether there's a little bit of a red herring in that Oswald was doing that for someone else in the Falcone family.
Interesting.
And
That he was going in to get the files and the jewels and then happened to kill Alberto while he was there, or that he was told to go and kill Alberto?
Potentially to kill Alberto.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Might not be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's an interesting idea. I feel like maybe somebody sent him there to get the files, because there's a lot of information there that could take down any of the Falcones, but it did feel like not an accidental killing, but it did feel like a real reaction.
No, it absolutely. As I say, it's pure speculative.
Interesting thing.
Either way, I'm not saying it needs to happen. I'm enjoying the way it's played out, but if it's just that straight story, that's equally as good.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm just saying, I wonder if there's going to be. I just wonder because Oz and Viti's relationship is so sort of antagonistic.
Absolutely.
Is that done for the benefit of Luca and Milosh?
Maybe. Yeah. I feel like that moment when Oswald's called in and Viti goes to him, well, the reason you're here is because Milosh wanted to talk to you and tell you that you're losing your business. I didn't want to. I would have just taken it out from underneath you. I think that's Oz going, hang on a second. I was right-hand man to Carmine, and you're telling me you wouldn't have even brought me in here to tell me my business is going, basically. So I think that's where the vendetta began for Oz. So, but it's interesting. We'll see it as the season goes on. I'm sure there'll be more about that. But right now, Viti is going to be under the spotlight significantly, with Maroney's having access to those photographs of him sleeping with the new boss's wife. That's not going to go down well at all.
Definitely. Excellent stuff. Any notes for this episode?
Just one note that really jumped out to me. I have to mention it. There's a scene with Eve and her girls who are over at Oz's for that party with the Falcone's men after the failed attack. I suppose they're celebrating that they're still alive. I guess that's a good thing. Eve very quickly realizes what's actually happened with Oz. She realizes he's the one that killed Alberto Falcone. Like, wow, she can read someone really quickly. She can see that he's trying to cover up everything around him. And she's really worried because that puts her on the outs. She's given him his alibi for the time of Alberto's death. And that puts her in the spotlight.
Yeah, it puts her and her girls under a lot of scrutiny and heat, she says. Yeah.
And remember, last episode we had Sophia with the young kid who pinpointed where Oswald was at the time, saying he was outside the Iceberg Lounge. So Sophia has that in her mind. She knows he was there, or believes he was there, but Eve has put forward this alibi that he was with her that whole night. So potentially that could play out pretty badly for Eve in the future. But Oz tells her not to don't worry about it. All I need to do is get these photographs into the right person's hands, and I've got loads of them. It's not just the photographs I have of Johnny Viti. I have loads of ways that I can become the kingpin of Gotham myself by taking all these people out. So you just stick with me. Keep up the appearance that there's an alibi there for that particular night until I become the leader of the crime syndicate in Gotham, and then you're at my side, kind of thing. So I thought that was quite interesting.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
And then one other quick one that we have to mention because we're Batman fans. One of the cam girls that's at the party as well with Oz, Roxy, who's talking to Victor. She talks about his home. She finds out that he's from Crown Point, which was flooded at the end of the Batman, and at the start of the season we saw the aftermath of that. But Roxy mentions that Crown Point is seen as a no man's land after the floods came through. The people who live there, if they're still alive, they don't get anything. They don't have access to anything. No Man's Land is just a huge storyline from the Batman. It was translated into the last season of Gotham, I think it was, where Gotham is cut off from all cities around it. And it was also translated in Dark Knight Rises as well.
Absolutely.
Where the city's cut off from the rest of the country. So it feels like they're maybe taking a little bit of inspiration from No Man's Land for Crown Point and what happens to it in this episode as well.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Interesting point.
No notes from myself. I think you've taken the ones I had in my mind.
Excellent stuff. John, how would you rate this episode of The Penguin, episode 2?
Absolutely loved this episode. I'd give it 5 morphine days out of 5. I just really loved how Oscorp came in and worked the room. He worked Sophia. Whether she's fully bought into him, I don't know. Whether it's a reluctant alliance that she's doing, but it's on the basis that he was the one speaking to her as an adult. He wasn't going around that social exclusion that she's had from the people in the wake, the sense of it from her own family, and he is apart from that. I love how Oswald, like a ballerina, spins on the head of a pin, really, both with the Maronis to keep himself fighting another day, as well as, in a real tight position at the Falcone mansion, where he has to move the mark from Johnny Vitti onto Sophia's leading man, Castillo, effectively. Yeah. And he translates that into a fairly brutal teaching point for Victor. Yeah. With Victor sort of face down with the dead Ervad and Castillo. So I just really enjoyed this episode. I just love the vibe of this series so far. So,
absolutely.
5 morphine days out of 5.
Excellent. Yeah, I really love it. I must say, there's something about how Colin Farrell's playing this role of Oz Cobb that and don't get me wrong, I loved Robin Lord-Taylor's version of Oswald Cobblepot in Gotham. I really enjoyed it, but for a lot of the seasons, he did feel like a low-level player who's trying to make his way from the bottom rung of the ladder. Here, with this version of Oz, he was at, let's say halfway up the ladder, fell back down, and then he feels like he's much higher in the position of Gotham. It feels like if he eliminates, let's say, Luca Falcone and Sal Maroni, that he's almost there. He's almost at the top of the ladder. He becomes Kingpin of Gotham. Really enjoying Colin Farrell's performance. And wow, Christina Milioti as Sophia Falcone is fantastic. And I felt for Victor again in this episode. Wow, that moment when he's made to kneel in the grave or lie down in the grave beside 2 dead bodies. This kid, again, was trying to rob hubcaps last episode, and here he is in a grave with 2 dead bodies, being told he's going to get a bullet in the back of his head if he ever messes up that bad again.
Renzi Feelers, I'm absolutely enjoying as Victor.
He's so good, isn't he?
Really
like that
good.
moment when he's talking to Roxy even, and you realise how young the kid is, when he's talking to this cam girl and she's so confident in front of him and he cannot get the words out even where
so
he
good.
lives.
Really kind of well perceived and just, portrayed. It's so good. Excellent stuff.
Yeah. We want to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you about what your thoughts on Penguin so far are. Email us into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your thoughts, or pop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/tvpodcastindustries. Oh, John, after that episode, I need a drink.
Yes, let us get on, fellow Gothamites and fellow quizzers, to the Iceberg Lounge quiz. Welcome back to the continuing quiz for this season of The Penguin. We're on episode 2, which of course brings us to question 2. What herb does the Penguin not like and gets Victor to pick out of the tacos that he's ordered?
That's hilarious.
Yes. And we also have multiple names for said herb.
We do. You do. Yeah. You can either give us the American name or the European name for that.
Well, you can give the American or the Italian or the other name for it.
Okay, Grant, it's a very funny scene, and to be honest, I'm in complete agreement with the Penguin on this one.
It's so weird.
John, do you want to give us the question one more time?
Yes. What herb does the Penguin not like and gets Victor to pick out of the tacos that he's ordered?
Great stuff. That's the second question. Put that together with the first one and give us all the correct answers at the end of the season to feedback@tvpodcastindustry.com, and you could be in with a chance of getting your hands on some Penguin goodies.
Yes. Good luck, fellow quizzers and Gothamites.
Absolutely. That's it for our coverage of The Penguin episode 2. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Pop on over to tvpodcastindustries.com to subscribe there, or you can search for Gotham TV Podcast or The Penguin Podcast on TV Podcast Industries.
Yes. Also, please remember to share the podcast, because, of course, sharing the podcast is, of course,
sharing the love.
The Penguiny love. And as well, you can support us over at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, or for a one-off amount at buymeacoffee.com/TVPI. We will, of course, be back, fellow Gothamites, for the next episode of The Penguin, episode 3, Bliss, on HBO and Sky.
Absolutely, yeah. Looking forward to the third episode of this excellent show. Been really enjoying it. Thanks so much for joining us. Talk to you again next time.
Yes, thanks so much, fellow Gothamites, for joining us. Until next week, keep watching, keep listening, and of course, keep waddling.
Bye.
Bye.